Hello, everyone. This is Tom Uren, and I'm here with the Grugq for the first recording of 2025. G'day, Grugq. How are you?
Good day, Tom. Good, and yourself?
I'm well. This week's episode of Between Two Nerds is brought to you by Resourcely. Resourcely makes it easy and safe to deploy cloud infrastructure. So check them out at resourcely.io. So today, Grugq, I wrote a little bit about Paragon, which is a spyware company, a sort of Israeli indigenous spyware company that was actually bought by an American private equity firm.
All right,
late last
hang on,
year.
let me guess. It was started by some 8,200 veterans and a VC in Israel. Yeah.
So way back a couple of years ago, I wrote about Paragon as a compare and contrast with NSO Group.
Right.
So NSO Group got into a lot of trouble because it was selling to whoever who was using like different countries, and I mean is whoever, with very loose standards about targeting people. And they were using that spyware abusively for human rights abuses to, perpetuate regimes, stomp on advocates or human rights advocates, that kind of thing. Now, Paragon, at the time, the perception was that it had taken the entirely opposite approach.
Right.
And it was deliberately trying to stay on the US government's good side.
Yeah, they were doing like a threat assessment and they were vetting their customers to make sure that, they weren't selling to like the devil who just happened to have $10 million and wanted to buy it. They were taking some effort. That was the impression, at least.
Yeah, I quoted the Financial Times, and I'll just read from that quote. The company sought a list of allied nations that the US wouldn't object to seeing deploy Paragon's product, which is called graphite. People with knowledge of the matter suggested 35 countries are on that list, although the exact nations could not be determined. Most were in the EU and some in Asia. Anyway.
So I'm going to guess that it was like the EU, Singapore, Taiwan, India.
I've never seen a list, but what's happened in the last couple of weeks is that WhatsApp has announced it's disrupted a Paragon hacking campaign. So there's lots of questions in my mind about what's been going on. And so we thought we'd talk about a couple of them. Now, coincidentally, you sent me a tweet, a very long tweet in Hebrew that we'll talk about as well, that contains some,
it seems to
don't
have
know if they're
insider
true or not.
info.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know.
It's certainly plausible. And it's even if it's wrong, it's worth talking about because they're interesting points, I think.
Yeah. So how should we kick this off with?
So one of the things I think is interesting is how apparently it was sold to, they sold to the Singaporean intelligence agency, but they sold to American intelligence agencies, plural. Right. And so that's that's kind of one of the interesting things about the US is that the intelligence community, the IC, has got, 18 agencies or something, and they're each their own thing. So if you're selling one copy to NSA, CIA is going to want one as well. And then, DIA is going to get their own one, and the FBI is not going to be left out. So you keep, you're able to sell the same technology over and over again to essentially the same client.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, part of the strategic decision. Do we keep our noses clean and we have the US market, or do we forego that and try and get a lot of money from less savory countries?
So I think, in a way, there aren't 18 countries that will buy as willingly as there are 18 agencies. in the US.
Right.
It's sort of, because they're obviously much richer than most of these other countries as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it makes very strong economic sense to just focus on the US and maybe a few European countries.
Right. So that makes me wonder how you hold countries to a standard, right? When you're selling a spyware product. So NSO Group, in its defense, said, yeah, well, we had terms of service that said that countries shouldn't do this. And
it seems like that's pretty ironclad right there. I don't...
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the problem, right? But Paragon has also said we have terms of service that prevent that. And so I was thinking about it and I was going, well, terms of service are not that strong, but then you've got customer selection. So they've got that,
right?
Like the Financial Times talked about an allow list of 35 countries that you could sell to. So presumably trustworthy, I'll use air quotes because, how do you trust a country?
I wouldn't say trustworthy so much as it's less trustworthy in that it's more the US doesn't categorically object.
Right, yeah.
Right, like they're not, like you can't say like DPRK is trustworthy, for example.
Well, you can absolutely trust them.
You could, hypothetically, you could absolutely trust them to abide by terms of service. However...
Well, I mean, you can trust them to do whatever's in their interest. And if the terms of service align perfectly with your interests, their interests, you've got no problem.
This may only be used for stealing cryptocurrency.
That's right. So I guess another way of thinking about it is that list is, in a way, a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card for Paragon, where they can say, they were on the list, so we thought it was okay. We'll never sell to them again.
Yeah. It's
when in their like sort of deal with the US government, perhaps.
He's your friend. You introduced me.
Yeah.
Like, you can't blame me for something he did. Like, I'm just not going to, I'm not going to do anything with him again. Like, I've learned my lesson,
So it seems like to me, terms of service combined with the list has an effect for Paragon.
Right. So, I mean, I think there's a sense of, making fun of just the terms of service thing, right? Yeah. Like, you've got a piece of paper that says you're not allowed to do it. Ha, ha, ha. That's going to stop a spy agency. How? But I don't think that's the full view. I think that there is actually weight behind that, right? Because if you're a spy agency and you're spending, $10 million to buy a license for something, you're not doing it for 3 months.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like that's still
intelligence requirements are enduring.
Right. Like it's not going to go away
just because you can get onto someone's smartphone.
Yeah, like you need to get that information this week, you need to get it next month, and you need to get it next year and the year after that. Right? So when you're buying a capability that's offering access to a smartphone or access to an instant messenger account.
Well, magic, really.
Right. You want that, right? You're not.
You don't want the magic to go away.
Yeah, like they have continuing requirements, right? Like it's never going away. They don't want the magic to go away either. They're not going to they're going to abide by the terms of service because it's going to keep the magic happening. I think is,
and that only changes once their political masters override that. Right? So it's almost it's almost against their better judgment, perhaps.
We'd like to think, right? But it's absolutely correct. Like you could say, we've evaluated all this stuff, we shouldn't be going after these targets, and when the boss says, but I want it, what are you supposed to do?
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to jump in at this point and say that almost immediately after Grugq and I had finished this discussion, news broke that Paragon had actually ended its relationship with Italy for breaking its terms of service. Anyway, back to the show. Yeah, so I guess the terms of service and the list is a mechanism for Paragon to be able to sell. And it's if it works with a particular country, that's great. And if it doesn't, well, they just say goodbye and move on. Anyway, let's move on to that tweet. So it's a very long tweet. It's in Hebrew. The thing I found most interesting about it is that there's this section in the middle which talks about the technical details of what's going on. So I'll read out some of that. Then we can talk about, can we actually trust a random tweet in a foreign language that's machine translated? So there's some strong caveats on this. I just thought it was very interesting. So the translation, Paragon, unlike most offensive cyber firms, does not install spyware on devices. Instead, its capability relies on exploring vulnerabilities in instant messaging applications, allowing them to breach WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal using only the target's phone number.
Right.
Rather than infecting the device with spyware, like most market solutions, they effectively steal unique identifiers akin to usernames and passwords. With these identifiers, they exploit a vulnerability in WhatsApp's main servers, impersonating the target device to intercept all incoming messages. Think of it as a sophisticated version of WhatsApp web that secretly connects to a target's account without their knowledge or consent.
So that sounds very plausible to me. It also sounds like a clever way of doing things in that, you're not leaving anything on the device, right? If someone says, I think I've been hacked, and they hand their device over, it can be examined, forever, and there's just nothing there to find. There's going to be some traces of the exploit for some short amount of time, but that's going to get, erased.
So again, many caveats here. I was thinking that surely this has got to be one of the ways that WhatsApp engineers would think things could go wrong, cloning a device.
They've built in workflows for that to happen, linking a device to your account. So it's a thing that they obviously support. The question is sort of, do they trigger on Israel showing up from the same IP for 100 different accounts?
Now, the other thing I thought was fascinating is that this is basically kind of like what a couple of people from GCHQ proposed as a lawful intercept sort of workaround for the proliferation of end-to-end encryption, is that companies like Apple, WhatsApp,
Signal, Telegram,
if they were served a lawful warrant, would silently add another participant to a conversation, and perhaps.
So I like that because I want to have more friends, so the more people that join, the better.
So
finally, someone to read my messages.
a practical implementation of that, a practical, presumably, what's the word? Inadvertent is the word I'm looking for.
To me, one of the things that stands out is he says WhatsApp, Signal, right? And then it's sort of never mentioned again. But that does make me a bit nervous that they weren't exclusively targeting WhatsApp, right? Has Signal done an audit to see if this is showing up, which I think would probably show up as new accounts being added, or new devices being added to accounts that are connecting from VPN endpoints.
In Signal, it if you're using the web version and a device, it'll give you linked devices. But I was thinking that this was, in a way like cloning a device, so it wouldn't appear as a separate one. One of the things they mentioned was Telegram, where, yes, this is a thing where you can log on to Telegram, and because it's not actually end-to-end encrypted, you
Right.
can get...
I mean, it is, except that one of the ends is a cloud server and the other end is your device.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, this is like, if this was true, it would be very interesting. I don't know if it's true. And the question I asked you when we were talking about, can we, like, how much trust should we put in this tweet?
Yeah. Who are you going to believe? A random, anonymous, automatically translated tweet from an account that no one knows about?
Well, I mean, it is in
official
Hebrew.
Statement. Yeah.
And it's an Israeli company. So, there's that.
I mean, the thing is, like, there's so much, like, there's vitriol of, like, someone is genuinely upset, right? Like, it comes across as, like, not, like, it's, I don't know, like 2,000 words long or something. It's huge.
It feels a bit personal. Like, because it's why is someone not doing something about this? These famous people are making money out of it, and they're not doing the right thing.
These are all the things that this guy is doing wrong. Why isn't the Ministry of Defense doing anything about it? I mean, that like, it feels personal. I think you're right. Like, it's this is probably the guy who tried to get a job at Paragon and was told it was a culture fit issue or something.
And it seems strange to just make up that stuff, because it seems like a bizarre, like, what's the point? So,
and it's internally consistent, right? Like, if it was someone just making things up, it would be like, it would have points that don't make any sense, or it would be sort of completely weird. But all of it seems internally consistent.
So here's a good example of one of the founders, I think, was Ehud Schneerson. And so later on, he said, Paragon believed their software would be nearly impossible to detect since it wasn't installed on the device itself until they were exposed. As usual, Schneerson's characteristic arrogance played a role.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Just,
So yes, it's an example of it being kind of personally.
It's someone who, it seems like insider knowledge rather than.
So like kind of this dissection of it makes you think more plausible than not.
Yeah, like the level of detail it goes into as well, I find very interesting. I mean, particularly some of the anecdotes. Like, they've got this one, which, like, it cracks me up. So one of the ways that an intelligence agency does operations is they will create a test environment that mimics, that sort of like, that perfectly replicates the target environment. And they will test their stuff in that environment to make sure that it works, to see, like, what artifacts does it leave behind, how reliable is it, all these different various things. So they set up this test environment. They tried it against an iPhone. Presumably they decided it was functional, whatever. And then shortly afterwards, they get a message from Apple on that iPhone saying, your device has been targeted by a nation-state attack.
That part sounds very plausible. I can
see that happening. So, and like, it seems too real, like, to not be true. Like, that's just, it's too funny to be fake. That's my stance.
I mean, the funny thing is, at least in the translation, it's not written in a funny way. We think it's funny, but it's like pretty straightforward down the line.
They play it straight, and they're outraged, absolutely outraged.
Yeah, there's another section where it talks about how Schneerson is a former Unit 8200 commander. So 8200 is Israel's kind of signals intelligence and cyber espionage unit, is my understanding. And it basically, the tweet complains about him luring away so many staff that it's dismantled one of the unit's most critical divisions. So that's the sort of bitterness of someone who's potentially been left behind, or
Exactly.
because that money in the end materialized, it says.
Yeah, right. He lures everyone away with the promise of riches, and they got rich. The bastard. Yeah, I mean, it feels personal. It really does. Like there's some, like he got left behind, or he's a competitor who has not had the same success with sales, or, I mean, there's a real sense of like personal investment in the story.
Yeah. So
or a really, really good author that should,
Yeah, so I keep on going back to surely this is something that you would really try and make sure didn't happen, like that kind of vulnerability from a WhatsApp engineering point of view. But I guess there's been like similarly amazing vulnerabilities that shouldn't exist, like, opening lock screens and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, like there's actually there's an amazing vulnerability that just got patched where a renderer process in Chrome can move the mouse and make it send clicks. And so you can literally have like an exe, and you can have it click the exe and run it. So, I mean, you can use the mouse to do the human interaction part,
right?
Which is, you'd think, why is that allowed? Like, and I think maybe the other thing to bring up as well is like, it is a vulnerability. Like they didn't intend for this to happen. They just had an oversight where they didn't prevent it.
Right.
Or they, it is
assuming
a bug.
The tweet is correct, right?
Assuming the tweet is correct. And I mean, the thing is the technical details that have come out from other sources, like,
they don't preclude
a bit thin on the ground.
Yeah. So I actually went and looked and at what other sources were saying. So no one else has reported that this is the way it works. They've said that there's an implant called graphite. So let me just read out what WhatsApp said. So this is from TechCrunch. WhatsApp said it had disrupted a hacking campaign. WhatsApp said that the hacking campaign used malicious PDFs sent via WhatsApp groups to compromise targets, and said it had pushed a fix to prevent this mechanism. The hack did not require any action by the targets, according to the company. So that, to me, doesn't spell it out either way. And so this is a paraphrasing by TechCrunch. WhatsApp, I've not found a public statement about it on anywhere. So I think they reached out to media outlets, and so, it's sort of Chinese whispers.
Right.
I doubt that WhatsApp would say, oh yeah, people can have their conversations mystically stolen with no interaction from you. Don't worry about it. And also from a Paragon point of view, it makes perfect sense that they would say, oh yeah, we have an implant like everyone else, and it works the same way as everyone else's.
Except ours is invisible and you'll never find it because it's that much better.
Yeah.
Right. Like we leave no trace behind.
So it's having an implant is a very good cover story if you have that capability.
And if you have that capability, and if that's the only capability you have, right? Because if you're a one-trick pony like this, you like when WhatsApp catches on and fixes it, you're done.
Yeah, and if it works on Signal, they'll tell Signal, and
yeah, that's it. You've
well, you'll still have Telegram.
No matter what, we'll always have Telegram. That's right. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how much you can trust a random tweet from essentially an anonymous account that's been machine translated from another language. But nothing stands out as being untrustworthy.
You want to believe, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to tell that anecdote from now on as if it's true. So,
Thanks a lot, Grugq.
thanks a lot, Tom.